All right, welcome back to the Diman Regional Vocational Technical High School Plumbing Shop channel. Here we are back at the components of your heating system, of your boiler. Being a oil-fired boiler, we would have to have a oil technician license to be able to install the boiler, install the oil, okay? But you still need a plumber to install what's a safety valve over here. If this was a gas-fired boiler and you were a licensed plumber, that's all the licenses you would need. If you were just a gas fitter, you could tie the gas in, but you couldn't do the plumbing, all right? So being a licensed plumber in Massachusetts allows you to do the gas and the plumbing side. So as you would imagine, when this boiler is installed, there's no water in it. All right, so we have to fill this system up. So how do we fill it up? Well, we have to bring potable water to the boiler, okay? And this pipe right here is my potable water supply. So it comes in here, loops around, and it goes through this device. So the people that came up with these devices, they made it as simple for us as possible, I think, they do exactly what their name is. Okay, so this valve is a backflow preventer. And as you would imagine, it would prevent backflow. Okay, so the water in this boiler is going through steel pipe, it's going through copper pipe, it's going through PEX pipe, and it can get a lot of sediment and dirt and oil and stuff in it. So if in any event that we had a back pressure in this system, we wouldn't want that water to go back into our drinking water, our potable water. So this device protects us from that. This is a code in Massachusetts. We must have this. It's a safety issue, so we have to put it in. Plumber's responsible for putting that valve in. Backflow preventer, okay? Other than that, other than the backflow, the gas or oil, and the venting, anyone can do this. If you were smart enough and you like to read and design and read the directions of the boiler, by code, anyone can put a boiler in Massachusetts, okay? When it gets inspected by the inspector, he's looking at the backflow preventer, he's looking at the fuel coming in, and he's looking at the fuel going out. He's not looking at anything else, okay? But most of the time, plumbers are doing the whole installation. So we have our backflow preventer. Next, we have what's called our pressure reducing valve. Our potable water side runs 60 to 80 psi, okay? Our boiler only runs on 15 to 18 psi. So it runs a lot less pressure than we actually get supplied to the house. And so in order to knock that pressure down, they've created a valve for it. This valve is rated for, the range is 10 to 25, but it's set at 12 to 15 psi. And that allows the water, once I turn this valve on, to fill this system up at 12 to psi, 12 to 15 psi in the system. Now, if I wanted to boost that up, I could raise this. If I lift that lever, it puts street pressure into this system. It allows me to put water into it faster, to fill the system faster. But other than that, it stays in the down position. I'm going to go pretty quick here so I don't make long videos. After our pressure reducing valve, sometimes known as a fast fill, we have a T here that's just an isolation valve, really. Isolates the expansion tank if the expansion tank needs to be changed. But this is an expansion tank. And what does it do? Well, it creates room for expansion. When water is heated, it expands. And that expansion in this system needs a place to go. So this is a closed loop system. Any water that's put into the system stays in here, never leaves unless there's a leak or it gets drained. So with that being said, when the water heats up and it expands, it needs a place to go. So there's a rubber diaphragm in here that pushes down. As that water expands, it pushes that diaphragm down and it gives it that place to go. And then when the water cools, that expansion comes back up and it goes right back to its normal position. Okay, if this expansion tank was bad and say the diaphragm failed and water leaked through, this valve right here would replace the water in the system that in that air bladder And now this tank would be full of water. And when the system heated up, the water would have no place to go. Well, what would happen? It would create more pressure than we are set up for. So we have a safety device that's called our temperature and pressure relief valve. This is piped to the floor, 12 inches to the floor, and it is set at 30 psi. So this system running at 12, 15 to 18 psi, if for some reason something failed and this expansion tank failed and the water could not expand and had no place to go, the pressure would build so much that this relief valve would release the pressure in the form of water and or steam, and it would release it at 30 psi. All boilers are pretty much set for the same psi relief valve. Okay. Above this, we have what's called a air scoop. It's got a direction of flow. There's an arrow here, shows the direction of flow. It's got to be installed in the right direction. There's a metal valve up here. It doesn't move. It's stationary. So as the water flows through the pipe, and if there's any residual air in this system, it'll hit that float, if you will, and it'll rise up to this, and then it'll come out of this air vent. Okay. There's a better air scoop for that. It's called a spiral vent. This is like a $12 item. The spiral vent is probably closer to a $90 item. It's a much better system. It catches almost all the air and relieves it. This isn't that way. I probably should have put one in, but as you can see, when I designed this, I didn't have much room to install it, and the spiral vents are much longer. They're about 10 inches long. Off of that, we have our manifold. Our manifold goes up to our circulators. These are called circulators. I have 4 zones here, so I have 4 circulators. What do you think they do? You guessed it, they circulate water. There's a pump in here that spins and pushes water on a call for heat. They are controlled by a zone relay switch. So when the thermostat comes in, so these little wires, thermostat gets a call for heat. One of these zones lights up, it sends power to our circulator, and then a circulator starts to spin, and it starts to pull that or push that hot water through the system, up through the house, whether what zone it would be. This is my first floor, this is my second floor, this is my addition, and this is my basement. Okay. On the opposite side of that, we have the other end of the circle, if you will, because a loop of baseboard is exactly just a circle. That pipe from my basement goes around my basement, and then it actually comes all the way back and it picks up here. So it goes a full circle around my basement and comes right back here. So when this system was empty, if I closed this valve and opened that fast fill pressure reducing valve and allowed water to push through that system, I could drain all the air out of that system, because we got to get all the air out. That pump will push water, but it's not very strong, and it will not push air in there if you don't get all the air out of the system. Okay. I have a mix of sweat and a mix of press. No rhyme or reason to why I did that. It's probably just stuff that I had in my truck when I was doing it. You can see black steel here and copper. Most people are doing strictly copper these days. I had the black steel. It's least expensive. The pipe diameters are going to change as well. You're going to see 3/4 inch. You're going to see 1 1/4 inch. And that's pretty much it, those two. The pipe diameters are dictated by the amount of heat that you need in the system, the amount of BTUs. All right, so that is something that's a little involved. You probably won't get into that to maybe your senior year, or actually in the field when you're working, sizing boilers. Okay, so it's all requirement of how much heat you need in the space, how much heat you need to distribute. On a residential house, a normal residential house, you're most likely going to see a 3/4 inch feed and return, maybe a 1 inch feed and return. The larger the house, the more volume, more heat, the larger diameter pipe you're going to use for a feed and return. I got a couple of sections to talk about how I heat my hot water, how I used to heat my hot water, and a couple of safety measures I have in place in case things failed, because things do fail, and I've had things fail. So I'm going to stop this video in hopes that I can send it as well, and we'll start the next section. All right, see you in a minute.